volta. Agora a gente vai ouvir o Dick Huey. Thank you. O Dick, ele tem uma vasta experiência em mídia digital. E agora está à frente da Toolshed, americana, fundada em 2001 em Nova York, que assessora grandes marcas e serviços de música digital, ajudando tanto na estratégia digital de divulgação, na promoção via web, como também nas questões de direito de aquisição, de utilização, com soluções criativas. Ele representa mais de 350 marcas e clientes e vai dividir um pouquinho da experiência dele com a gente.
Hello. Wow. I see that there aren't very many people in the room using headphones. A few, but I'll speak slowly and stop me if you have a question. I have a funny accent, many people say, because I've lived in so many different places in the United States and also in Sweden. Very funny mix. So my name is Dick Huey, and I want to start by thanking ABMI for inviting me down to speak to all of you. I'll tell you a little bit about myself in a minute, but I would like to let you all know that my entire career has been spent 25 years now working with independent record labels. So I'm extremely pleased to be here amongst you. Oh, good, it works. So this is the topic of our panel today. We want to talk about what you need to do to effectively utilize internet marketing. There are a lot of tricks, and I'm going to go over as many of them as I can. I'm going to do this really in two parts. The first part is going to be a discussion, sort of an overall discussion of the approach that I believe you need to take when you're setting up a new artist. And the second part is going to be, there will actually be two examples, one that does not belong to us, one that we didn't do, and another one that we did do, where we took a new artist and were able to create an extensive internet marketing campaign around her first record. So this is us. I think it probably helps to give you a little bit of an idea of my background. I started out in the music business in 1987 as a struggling artist. I did that for about 2 years and stopped at that point. But I did it long enough to find my first management client. It was a woman who was singing in a bar, and I was walking out as she started singing, and I turned around and I walked back in again. I ended up managing that young woman and signing her to a record label in Germany called Glitter House. And we did a tour. I picked up another band and had the good fortune to pick up that second band right before they were signed to the Beggars Group, which is a UK-based record label, which is now composed of Matador Records, 4AD, Rough Trade, and what's the one that I'm forgetting? Let's see. Thank you, Excel, the biggest of them. So I signed one band to Beggars and had another band that was just about ready to put out their second record, and the marketing guy quit. So I panicked, and the only thing I could think of to do in order to make sure that the band that I was managing was going to have a future at that label was to move my family to New York and take over the marketing job myself. So that's what I did. I moved to New York and ran marketing for a year for the Beggars Group on a very small budget. It was a very small label in the States at that point. There were only 4 employees. It's much bigger now. About a year into that, we decided to, we started having conversations about new media, which at the time really was new. We didn't even know what to call it. And About 6 months into those meetings, the chairman asked if anybody wanted to volunteer out of about the 15 people that were in the meeting to run the division. And nobody volunteered, which surprised me. So I volunteered, and that's how I got into new media, and that's how I launched my career. So for 4 years, or actually almost 5 years, I ran the new media department at Beggars Group. It was good timing. I call it educated luck. It was one of a series of educated mistakes that I've made in my career that have turned out in my favor. In 2001, I split off from Beggars. I kept them as a client. Oh, you can't see any of this. All right. I didn't know that when I put the presentation together. Sorry. And I started providing the same services, the same new media services that I had provided for Beggars, which were marketing services, etc. Oh, that's a little better. Thanks. Marketing services and licensing services to other independent record labels. We worked with some of the household names in the States, Kill Rock Stars, Righteous Babe Records, which is the record label for Ani DiFranco. Let's see, then we took a break from that for a while. We came back to it, and we added Merge Records and Touch and Go, Saddle Creek. So these are some of the largest U.S. independents and represent a big percentage of the great independent music that's put out in the United States and worldwide. Whoop, there we go. We're a split business. We have a part of our business that's based in San Francisco that focuses on social media grassroots marketing and also on publicity. We've had over 350 individual artist campaigns in the last 12 years. These are some of them. And the other part of our business is a consulting business. That's fine too. The other part's a consulting business. We consult tech companies and we consult record labels. For record labels, usually independent labels, I represented the Beggars Group on the Sound Exchange Board, performing rights organization based in Washington, D.C. for 9 years. I was a board member there. And I've also done work with a number of different tech companies, including most recently Spotify. Prior to their launch in the United States, I did their independent content acquisition. So I went out to independent record labels in the States and introduced them to Spotify and signed them up. So that's my background. So as far as the rollout for a project, the approach that we normally take is very carefully looking into exactly what the marketing objective is. Now, we all know that the objective on every record is to sell the record. You want to sell records, but we try to go deeper than that. For instance, if it's a first album, you know, your objective might be just to make sure that somebody other than the artist's friends buys the record. In that case, they probably have a very small social network, and your goal is to expand beyond that social network, to actually get people who didn't know the band before you got them. And our approach for something like that might be to focus heavily on Facebook advertising, which is relatively cost-effective, and we'll go into that in a little bit. Second album might be a little bit different story. Maybe you had a breakout hit on your first record, and you're just trying to replicate or at least get to the same level with the second record. Or you might be working with a legacy artist. A legacy artist might be somebody like Amy Mann, for instance, or Martin Sexton, an artist that does not have, you know, maybe they have lots of records out, but they don't they have not traditionally worked in social media. They don't really know how to use the platform. And your goal is just to make sure they don't make a mistake, but also to help them find ways to work with their network of people, the people who buy their records. So for instance, we do work with the artist Martin Sexton, and recently in trying to grow his YouTube, we created this feature promotion, if you will, that we called YouTube Wednesday. And on Wednesday, we would ask fans to mail in concert videos that they had shot with their cell phone to Martin's manager. She would watch the videos. There weren't a terribly huge number of them. There might be 5 or 10 each time. And then we'd post up the winning video, the one that we liked the best, and usually provide 2 tickets to a show in the area or in an area near where that person lived. So as you all know, there's a lot going on in this segment. Not only are there a lot of players in this segment, but all the players are really segmenting themselves. So, you know, with Rhapsody, you have a service that's a streaming service. So is Spotify, so is RDO, so is Deezer, but they all have different criteria attached to them. Rhapsody is not particularly friendly to application developers, to app developers. Spotify, on the other hand, is very friendly in that respect. And RDO, or radio, some people call it, is more of a lean-back experience. It's an experience where you don't have to work so hard at figuring out what it is that you want to listen to. Another part of the, usually the setup that we do on a campaign is to look at direct-to-fan. So direct-to-fan, super interesting area. The most interesting thing about it is the data that suggests how much money the average record label or the average artist leaves on the table by not offering price points that a particular customer wants to spend on an artist. So a direct-to-fan campaign means that you are generally you're selling off the artist's website. In some cases, that might be controlled by your label. In other cases, you might allow the artist to control it. But the key thing is the numbers. $26 being the average that's collected for a particular artist using Topspin. And for a well-known artist, $50. There are a number of other platforms as well. Pledge Music is a relatively new one that you may or may not be familiar with. Pledge donates a portion of what they receive, or they allow you to donate a portion of what you receive to charity. So it changes the ask. It changes what you're asking of somebody when you ask them to help fund your campaign. Bandcamp is another platform that can be utilized by a small record label, for instance, if you have need of a digital store, you can utilize their platform to offer a digital store. And the label Asthmatic Kitty, which is Sufjan Stevens' label, you may know who he is, they use Bandcamp. So along with the segmentation in digital retail outlets and in direct-to-fan outlets, the marketing area has also segmented. We're in there. We're a specialist now. We really do online-only publicity and grassroots marketing. We think of those as two very separate products, but we share products back and forth between some of these companies. If there's a particular project that isn't right for us, at any time we might be working only 7 or 8 projects. That's sort of an average for us. Somebody like Ariel Hyatt at Cyber PR might be working 50 projects. So we'll turn things back and forth. So I want to start moving into the section of actual artist experiences. And I think this one's a fun one to show, not because she's on a label, because she's not, but because it shows you what's possible if you have an artist who's driven, and even an artist who doesn't really have anything particularly going for them. So in Daria's case, she was playing clubs, small clubs, mostly coffee houses, to 5 or 10 people, sometimes 15 people. And on a particular night, she had driven about 2 hours to play one of these shows. And about 5 people had showed up, and her brother called her and said, I heard about this new thing, Google+. Have you ever heard of it? And she said, no. But she said, I'm going to look into it because what I'm doing isn't working. And Google+, which is a social network, allows you to do something called a hangout. So this is where you can perform, for instance, you can talk or perform to 9 other people in a group, and you do it online. You use Google software to do it. I think we might have Google in the audience. Maybe not. Oh, yes, there is. So Daria did this, and at her first hangout, she had that sort of scary moment where she turned on the camera and she sat down with her guitar and she thought, maybe nobody's going to show up. And at her first hangout, she had, I think I have the numbers right, she ended up having 40 or 50 people show up from all over the world to watch her perform, just curious what she was doing. And she grew that to these numbers, which I think are completely remarkable. 590,000 fans. This is 10 months later for an artist who really didn't have anything going for them. And today, 2.5 million fans. She was picked up in Billboard, written about. She performed at the Google campus, all 3 of them. Sponsored by Taylor. And she does hangouts. She does hangouts on the air, which is a promotional opportunity offered to very few select artists through Google. Super impressive. So that shows you what's possible. Let me now show you a specific example that we did for the artist MNDR on Ultra Records. So this band, it's an electronic band, what we call an EDM band, electronic dance music. And she had put out a number of individual releases on iTunes and a couple of the streaming services over the years, really over a 3-year period. She played keyboards with Mark Ronson and had toured a little bit, but really was coming into this project with a pretty blank slate. Ultra put together a team. Press Here is a well-known press company in New York, and they handled press. We handled the social media marketing. At present, we've been on this project for 14 months. So we started in March 2012, and the first thing we did was what we call a social media audit. This is something you can do. We go through, we have a particular formula for doing our social media audits. But really what we do is start in the obvious places and work down from there. So most bands have a Facebook. In MNDR's case, she didn't. She had what's called a community page, which meant she really wasn't using Facebook. And Facebook had set up a page for her.